I raised £895,775 in one proposal. And in today's show, I'm going to be sharing 5 key principles I apply to bring about that successful outcome. Plus, I'll be sharing 3 mistakes that I often see leaders, entrepreneurs, business owners make that could actually, if they started to integrate that, it could bring them more success. So wherever you are on the journey, whether you're on your startup journey, you're a nonprofit leader or a business owner, I'm sure there's going to be something in today's show where you can learn a little something. So as I mentioned, I raised this large sum of money in one proposal and I was headhunted to do it. And when I was approached, it was a moment for me to recognize what season of life I was in and appreciating who I needed to become in order to achieve that outcome. So, in a previous life, many years prior to achieving the 895,000, I raised 500,000. It was the largest amount of money that I'd raised at that point. And so time had elapsed, life had moved on, I had grown. And whenever I'm noticing a new call for reinvention, for pivot, for growth, I always think about what season am I in now? And what helps me to really dig into that is to identify what is my flywheel. So that's the first principle, knowing what your flywheel is. And what I mean by this is, what cards do you actually have in your hands? That could be your skills, your talents, your wisdom, your experiences, your insights. So I surveyed all of that. I excavated and I had a look at that. However, what I also did was I added the layer of transformational astrology. So back in the late 90s, I studied astrology at the Faculty of Astrological Studies here in London. In fact, my absolute first class that I went to was actually taught by Sue Tompkins, the famous Sue Tompkins. Anyway, that's an aside. But appreciating the power of astrology and applying it to my own life, at this season in my life, I looked at my chart again and I extracted just 3 key signatures from it. The first one was my first house, the rising sign. So I have my rising sign in Sagittarius. I then looked to the 10th house, and the 10th house is the pinnacle of the chart, but also the house that reflects our career, our professional life, our personal standing, how we are seen in the world. My 10th house is in Virgo, which is ruled by Mercury, and Mercury is in the sign of Virgo in the 10th house, and it forms a very close relationship with the MC, which is the pinnacle of the chart. So my Mercury, which is essentially about the power of communication, is in a very powerful sign. It's in Virgo. Virgo is into the detail of things. It's the ability to analyze and deconstruct and reconstruct and synthesize. And so that's like one of my micro superpowers. We all have our superpowers, but with regards to my 10th house, that's my combination. Then I looked at where my North Node is. My North Node is in the 8th house of Cancer. And the North Node is a direction that is encouraging us to travel in the direction of this lifetime, because it's the arc that helps us to grow in our own personal stories, our narratives. And given that my North Node is in the 8th house of other people, other people's resources, but particularly their hidden resources. For example, their intellectual property. How can I work with people to help them identify their hidden assets as well as their obvious ones that they can repackage and use in the world that is nourishing and nurturing and caring, because it's in the sign of Cancer, which is ruled by the moon. So they are just 3 of my signatures. There are a load of others, but these are 3 of my signatures that I was able to think, right, okay, they form part of the cards I'm holding in my hands. When you know the cards in your hands. What they help you with is motivation, if you're needing a little bit of revving up, and momentum. So at the time when I was headhunted, it was in what I call the winter of the economic downturn, where we all were being buffeted by the very chilly winds between 2008 and really through to about 2012. The economic downturn, the credit crunch, the bottom wiped out of all of the markets and industries. I was in the nonprofit sector at that point, doing strategic consulting advising. My income literally disappeared overnight, had difficulty finding work, and so it went on. So I was in a season, like all of us were, whereby there was reevaluation. But on my personal journey, it was about reinvention. And this is where I was headhunted for this. So knowing your flywheel helps to create leverage. So that's principle number one. Principle number two is about the context in which all of that partnership work, as well as me raising the money, what was the context that was shaping our world? I've given you an indication. It was the global economic downturn, but on a more local level, particularly here in the UK, particularly here in London, we were feeling the cuts to the public purse, and they've just been slashing ever since. But particularly during that season. And we were living through David Cameron's Tory government. So that equally shaped the context. So we had the economic downturn, we had the slash into the public purse, literally no money left there. We had David Cameron, and he introduced this policy called Big Society. Big Society was about decentralizing, or taking a decentralized approach to how to deliver statutory services. So outsourcing government services into the hands of local communities, local residents, and local leaders as a form of empowerment. Sounds great on the surface. It was actually quite problematic. And particularly during those early years, it was the recognition that if you're outsourcing statutory services for the non-profit, voluntary sector, charity sector to take up, it sounds great, but where's the money? Where's the resources? And that's the context in which I was operating with as I was being headhunted by this partnership to help them raise this money. So that's the context. Number two, always think about whichever industry you're in, our world continues to shift and change. What's the context that is impacting or has the potential to impact your world, and where do you sit within all of that? So context is the second thing. The third principle is moving from me to they, to them, meaning the partnership. So the partnership comprised of 4 micro organizations that did phenomenal work and punched way above their weight, but were invisible beyond the borders of Hackney. So they were equally in this context of no money, etc. And there was an opportunity by the big lottery, and they were inviting 25 partnerships from around the country who had the opportunity to bid for this large amount of money. And so that's when I was brought in. So the context I've given you. Now, the partnership, it was about having an appreciation of what could be their goal and what could be a desire that they have. So before even really working with them, I stood in their shoes to think about, and I held it very lightly because it wasn't about coming in with hard and fast assumptions about what this organization or group of organizations wants, but it is about attempting to stand in their shoes and to reflect on, well, as I'm continuing to work with them, they will shape their goals. Their goals will become very apparent, as well as what are the individual leaders of each of the organizations, the 4 micro organizations, beyond the infrastructure organization that was supporting them and the support from the local council. But for the 4 key protagonists, for their individual organizations, but also as a collective, what could their desires be? So, a goal that I held very lightly was they want to stabilize their funding, their income for at least the next 3 to 5 years. By doing that, they can continue to really ramp up and provide first class services to their clients that will then empower them. And the them was 200 or more than 200 children and families that were empowered educationally and from a parental perspective. And that's essentially, having completed the work and worked with them, that's essentially the overarching goal. Then the desire, whatever we're doing in the world, we have a public thing that we do, that we offer the world. But we're also driven, and it's those desires, it's what's hidden, what's under the surface. What could be the desires of each of the leaders of these organizations, and collectively as a partnership? What are the desires? Having worked with them, their desire was to have influence in the most positive way on their clients, who are these 210 children and families that then went into the hundreds of people, to have such a positive influence on them that they then saw leverage within their own lives, felt more empowered, took more decisions in their lives, etc. So they certainly wanted influence over this group. And then individually, but also collectively, what they also desired was to be recognized for their authority in the areas in which they have expertise. So they were the hidden desires. So think about what it is that you're building, why you're building it. Think about, goal and desires as personality and character. The personality is the front door to your world. You may come across it with a particular trait. You're somebody who's very conversational, for example. And within that, you might want to be recognized for your oration skills. So recognition or admiration could be something that you're looking for. So work out what your goal is, the external face you're presenting, but also what is it that you desire, because we equally want to be fulfilled as we are undertaking our work. So that was the third principle. The fourth one was knowing who the antagonist was in the story. All of us have stories. We live personal stories, we have collective stories. There's a protagonist, and then there's an opposition. So, who was the opposition? The opposition was this new policy coming from the Conservative Party, David Cameron, about big society. Sounds great on the surface, but it was on a very limited, dwindling resources. And so potentially organizations are being set up to fail. That's an opposition. That's what they were pushing against. And when you know your opposition, it helps to strengthen your own position. Another way to think of this is, if I give you the example from the world of music, Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift sings about ex-boyfriends. They are her antagonists. They are her opposition. So as you are designing, creating, shaping, about to launch, know who your opposition is, because it helps you take up a position. And then fifth, coming back to astrology, was about knowing the timing of things. Now, when I learned astrology, my way into astrology was psychological astrology, because off the back of that, I then went on to do a master's. I completed a master's in Jungian analytic psychology. And it was as I was preparing for this show, I looked at, because I've now learned about traditional astrology, and zodiacal releasing is an ancient timing technique, which I didn't know back then. So I was looking retrospectively to see, what season was I in from a timing point of view? Was I in a peak period whereby it was about being really active? It's where I am being more prominent in my world of work. So, peak periods, you have like a preparatory period, you have a peak period, and you have a completion period. So, when I looked back over that time frame, I was operating within a peak period on all four levels within zodiacal releasing. Level one can go on for decades, particularly if it's ruled by the planet Saturn, which is what I'm literally living through. Level two is where you are operating for a period for maybe a couple of years. Level three is about the weeks or the months, and level four are the days in which you could be in a completion period or a peak period or a preparatory period. So looking back, I was actually in a major peak period over that time, and that contributed. Thinking about your own planning, we're boomers or we're Gen Xers who are in our 50s. So we've lived 5, 6, 7 decades. And we have a myriad of experiences when things have felt really difficult because they were really difficult. And we kept pushing and pushing and pushing to achieve this outcome. Understood from an astrological point of view, we may not have been in the season to push where we needed to be prominent. We could have been in a preparatory season. So, what's really useful is to think about when you're goal setting, what you can do to place yourself, what data do you have that could appear to be favorable for you. Now, I appreciate some of you may not be into astrology, but it doesn't mean that these principles cannot apply. If you're not into astrology, another way to step into your season to help you grow and expand could be about your values. Identifying what your key values are a wonderful way for you to see what your arc is. What are your current values? You might feel stale within your world. It could be a time for you to revamp your values. And in the revamping of your values, you understand that actually I could grow here. Don't forget, you are the protagonist. There's a story arc to your life. You're moving from one version of yourself to another. So your values could be a way in if astrology is not your thing. A third way in could be looking at those mythological stories that are understood across generations and cultures. And there was a famous mythologist called Joseph Campbell, and he wrote two seminal books. This one here is The Power of Myth. I've got the other one as well called The Hero with 1,000 Faces. I just couldn't put my hands on it. And it's the story of mythology. And when we operate, if we take on the mantle or the identity of a myth, we are able to see ourselves in an enlarged way. And then think about it's the philosophical stories that are embedded within that might help us to grow. So you've got the astrological angle. If that's your jam, that's your vibe, it certainly is mine. If that's not your vibe, then it could be about your values, or it could be that you're exploring ancient myths as a way in. So they're the 5 principles that I employed, embodied in order. They contributed to me raising £895,775 in one proposal. And after that achievement, and then just documenting my own insights and knowledge and wisdom, I wrote a book, Nonprofit Booster 10 Steps to Building a Successful Organization. And that was when I was in another reinvention phase, when I became an author and a publisher. So that gives you context, that gives you background, that gives you nuance as well in terms of how you could move from point A to point B to pivot to create leverage within your world. Now, here are the 3 mistakes that I see and have seen over the decades, whether I've worked in and amongst nonprofit leaders or stepped away and done more entrepreneurial things, even down to last week working with a client. These 3 things I see often. The beauty of being a leader, however, it doesn't matter what it is that you're building. You've got a program, you've got a project, you've got a service, you've got a product, is that we are concentrating on the thing we're building. So it's very me focused. It's the thing I'm doing, it's the thing you're doing, it's your baby that you're birthing. So the focus can be internal, or the mirror, you're looking at your own reflection. But a journey from here, the reflection, through to me, to we, to they, to them, is a really useful one. And what it helps to do is to open you up, because them, they, who are your stakeholders, your supporters, your fans, your clients, they are equally looking to you as a leader. And leaders, they're expecting a level of intelligence, because leaders should be readers. And that's something I always share with clients, is that not, you shouldn't just be focused on the area, your industry. What are the complementary industries, but also what's happening in our world, particularly now that AI is here. We're very much living in a technological driven world, and there's lots of AI slop. That, what are your thoughts? What's going to make you distinguishing? What is your point of view? So leaders should be readers. The second is thinking about who's the hero in your story. Who's the hero? What are you doing? Whose point of view are you telling this story from? Very important. Don't forget your inner story. Invariably, when you're just having the mirror here, you're thinking about me. So am I the hero of the story? Are you the savior? You may or you may not be. Having a deep appreciation of the world or the backstory to your audience will help you to identify who is the hero of the story. And then thirdly, what's the contrarian view that you have? Contrarian view, you can swap that out for what's your opposition, what's the obstacle, what do you have to overcome? So I'll give you another example, this time from the world of beauty. If we take Rihanna, she started as a musician, then went on to become a beauty mogul. And why she became this beauty mogul is her opposition was the other beauty providers. In that, makeup, the world of makeup was very limited in terms of providing products for Black and brown women. So the supply was very limited. So Rihanna pushed against that norm. And what she did on her first launch was that she launched 40 shades of lipstick to take account of and to accommodate the varying complexions within Black and brown women. So it doesn't matter what industry you're in, it's about what are you pushing against, and holding a contrarian view is going to help you shape your personal brand. It's going to make you distinctive in this sea of AI slop. Now, when I raised the £895,775, I did it way before AI. AI wasn't even a twinkle in anybody's eye during the 2010s through to 19 era. It really has come to prominence over the last 3 years. And so I'm sharing with you expertise and insights that I created, crafted, built, implemented in a pre-AI world. Hence why I'm able to share with you, here are principles, not tactics. Here are principles that work time and time again, and I have used and deployed in a variety of different ways. So that's it. That's what I want to share with you. Now, if you are keen to collapse time and you have a burning desire to take what could come across as, confusion. You've got 5, 6, 7 decades of lived experience, all the stuff that you've done. And you want to create a solo business that's based on a product, a service, a program, and you want to collapse time and you want it in a personalized way, then I do offer one-to-one VIP sessions where during the session the focus is on you. And for that time, that VIP session, what we do is we work through in the detail as to what it is that you want to build, create, and then begin to shape something for you. If that speaks to you and if that appeals to you, then check out the links below. And also, if you're interested in this idea of timing using the ancient astrological technique of zodiacal releasing, equally check out the link below on my stand store. So stay well, and I will see you again on the next show. Bye.